So for the first tutorial on Access databases, we're going to go over how to create a database from scratch. Once you've launched Access, you should get a page that looks like this. The first step will be to click Blank Desktop Database here. This is where you will name your database. For the assignment, we would appreciate it if you used your name as the file name. It makes it easier for us to organize and mark. Then you click Create. This whole thing is called your Access database. A database is divided into components such as tables, forms, queries, and reports. You should start with the table because the other components require a table to work. A table is divided itself into two things. There are fields, which are the vertical components. Fields are categories of information. If you were doing a database about students, fields could be IDs, names, grades, classes, things like that, just broad categories of information. The horizontal components are records. A record would be each individual entry in the table, so each individual student, as you enter it in, would be a record. While the first screen you get is this screen, this is not where you should start. You should start by going to the design view for your table by clicking in the top left corner and selecting design view. It'll ask you to save your table. Just hit OK. The first thing you should do once you enter design view is disable the primary key. A primary key is a way of signifying that every entry in a field is going to be unique. But this isn't a requirement for your database, and there is an error where if you accidentally enter the same thing twice, it goes into an infinite loop of errors and crashes. So just for your own safety, disable the primary key by clicking the primary key button in the top left corner here. Here is where you would name your fields. If we were to keep doing our student database example, we would go student name. The data type is what type of information the field is going to have. Since we're doing a name, we're going to want a text data type. You should always use short text for your database because long text will cause you problems later if you use it. So use short text. We would keep going like this where we might have a field named student number, which would of course be a number field. We could have a class name, a test mark, and a max score. For the assignment, you are going to need a calculated field. So we have numbers here. A calculated field gets its information based off of the numbers you enter into two other fields. We have a field for test mark and we have a field for max score. If we wanted to have a grade from that, we could get the grade by dividing the mark by the score. So you'd start by naming your field grade. You would then select the calculated field here. The calculated field brings up the expression builder. This is where you would put the math in that's going to calculate your field. When you're doing math with field names, the field names have to be in square brackets and they have to match exactly how you entered them into the table. So for me, I would start by opening a square bracket and I want to use the max score, so I need to make sure my capitals and spacing match. You use a slash for division in computers. So max score, test mark over max score. Test mark over max score will give me my grade. However, since it's a grade and it might have decimal values, by default all numbers are integers, which means that they cannot have a decimal value. But I might want decimal values for my grade. So to fix that, I'm going to need to change the result type off of integer. To do that, I click grade. Here's where I typed in my expression. Underneath that is a result type. There's a list of options here. I want to use double. A double is a value that can have numbers both ahead of and behind the decimal, whereas a decimal can only have numbers behind the decimal. So for your fields, you'll probably want doubles, so we'll pick double. The format is how that number will be shown in the table. We're going to use fixed. Fixed just means that it will always show a certain amount of decimal places even if they weren't needed. We can set how many it shows by selecting a number from here. We're going to set it to 2 so that we can have decimals. There will always be 2 decimals because it's fixed on 2. Once we have all of our fields entered in here, we will switch back to the datasheet view by clicking the datasheet view in the top left corner. It'll ask you to save your table, you'll hit yes. So now we'll have our fields we entered across the top here. We could have a name, a number, and a class name. You'll notice that the grade is showing an error. This is because mark and score are zeros, so it's trying to take 0 and divide it by 0, which is just never going to work. If we added in a real grade here, the grade will automatically calculate it here with 2 decimals because that's what we have it set as fixed. We could then keep just entering in more students, but we're not going to do that for this example. We're going to move on to a pre-made example that's found on the lab pages so that you don't have to enter in a database to follow along. But for the assignment, you need to create your own database. You need 7 fields. So you will set 7 things in the design view. 3 of those fields have to be numbers. One of those number fields has to be calculated based on the other numbers in the field. So make sure when you're picking your database topic that you have a field that would be easy to calculate with the other numbers. You need 7 fields and 60 records for this assignment.